Okay, hey everyone, happy Sunday. Today we're going to be discussing more secrets to living out of your brokerage account and retiring early with Yieldmax, including the funds, the most popular funds that they manage, MSTY, YMAX, ULTY, and CONY. We're going to discuss how to use these funds to retire early out of your account, how to get these dividends, okay, which is over $800,000 per year, our income. And we're going to outperform the markets in the process. I'm going to show you how we're doing this. It's because we're using some margin properly with our Yieldmax holdings, okay? So we're up 23% year to date. We were up 25% just a couple days ago. We had a little pullback. The indexes are up much less than that. The S&P's up 8, the Nasdaq's up 9, the Dow's up 4, the Russell's up only 2. So we're living financially free out of our brokerage accounts using Yieldmax, ULTY, MSTY, CONY, and YMAX. And you can do this too. Email me for my e-guides at akintodd48@gmail.com if you need help doing this and living freely out of your account. Or you can head to my website, unconventionalwealthideas.com, where we're leading the FIRE movement. You can see all of my testimonials here. You can see all about my e-guides here. All right, there's an About Me page. You can see more about how we rang the bell with Yieldmax recently, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we're in Times Square, New York. Today we're going to be discussing the secrets to living free out of your brokerage account. And actually I do have 4 really good ideas for y'all today. I'm going to share with y'all the secret to using these funds and how I maximize them. So I'm not just plugging these ticker symbols to get views like many other YouTubers. We're not just going to be talking random stuff here, just dividend yields and, wow, look at the dividends of these funds or that. We're going to be discussing how to actually retire on these funds, okay? Starting with ULTY, okay, we always talk about ULTY, all right, and YMAX. That seems to be the crowd favorite lately, okay? And ULTY, it has an 88% yield, which is obviously quite high, and the returns year to date are nice. They're 13%. How can you argue with 13% performance with ULTY? It's beating the indexes, at least this is since inception, okay? So 13% there. Now, look at the holdings for ULTY. All right, the holdings for ULTY are, in my opinion, very diversified. They're obviously speculative in some cases, but we have Coinbase here, which we're going to be talking about CONY. So here's ULTY, right? And I just showed you ULTY, and I'm showing you, CONY, the 140% dividend yield here with CONY, MSTY, the 85% yield, and YMAX, we have it looks like a 43% yield here, okay? Let's refresh that. It is 43%. Okay, now we have these high yields. How do we live retired on these funds? Okay, well, the secret, all right, I'm going to give you the secret. I've given this secret before, but if I learned one thing in school, in finance, okay, when I got my finance degree from U of H, I didn't learn anything, okay, about trading stocks or getting dividends. But again, if I learned one thing, it was from one of my professors, Salim Nathani, and we talked about, it was portfolio management, okay? It was one of my later classes in finance as a senior, and there's one thing I got from it, and that one thing is correlation, all right? We're going to talk about correlation and how I get this correlation without trying, okay? So what we have is, if you look at this picture, this is one of the day's gains that we got last week. The NASDAQ was at 1.39, as you can see above. We were at 1.75, or $30,000. So we're getting these day's gains in addition to these dividends of over $800,000 per year. And next week, that number is going to rise significantly because I have quite a few moves slated for my members. I can't wait to share with y'all these moves that we're going to make to get this income up even higher next week. I see many of my members' comments in the chat already. I can't wait to see y'all and get to y'all. Great to see y'all. So in chat, let me know, okay, what you think about this video. So the secret is correlation. Once again, how did I get these days gains right here, 30,000 or 1.75? When sometimes something like a YMAX or an ULTY or a Defiance or a Roundhill, sometimes those funds are not up as much as the holdings themselves or the indexes themselves. So it's important to figure out how to achieve correlation, okay? And then when we when I give you that secret on, it's a few little things, a few steps on how I achieve this correlation, then we're going to talk about how to maximize CONY and MSTY along with YMAX and ULTY. Because we're talking about YMAX and ULTY, they are index plays, and that's one way I get my correlation, okay? And the key with understanding ULTY and YMAX is, again, they don't really quite move up as much as the indexes. I mean, some days they move even down more than the index. Let's say an ULTY is down 0.84 on Friday, and then the NASDAQ was down 0.40. So how am I getting the correlation? Okay, ULTY was down 0.84, but we were down 0.34, okay, even with the margin leverage that we use. Okay, we have a lot of money in ULTY, and so this margin leverage that I use, by the way, it's paid down by my dividends in less than 1 year. So never worried about my margin leverage, because if you're new to this channel and you're just now watching, for every $1 you put in your account, you get $4 of purchasing power. I'm just using, a fraction of this over 1 million in purchasing power to get ahead. We should have, well over 4 million in purchasing power. You see that we have 2 million here because we use so much margin already. But we have our available withdrawal here over 400,000, which means we can withstand over 20% corrections and never reach a margin call. We never have, we never will. We reached a margin call once in Corona. This is before I started my YouTube channel, of course. And, I told y'all all about the lessons I learned from, investing in real estate and energy funds that had high yields. That's not the way to go. Yieldmax has high yield funds that are indexed, of course. And so ULTY and YMAX are indexed. And so I can put a lot of my money behind them and get this correlation that I'm speaking of, and not burn out in a down market, not reach a margin call. However, how do you get the day's gains correlation? Like, how did I, do so well with only being down 0.34 when ULTY again was down 0.84? Okay, YMAX was down 0.08. All right, that's a good sign. So how am I doing this? Okay, well, first of all, in order to get this correlation, you need to stay indexed, which YMAX and ULTY are somewhat indexed, as I already laid out. Okay. And then also I do other things, like first things first, I use Cornerstone to get a majority of my indexing. Okay, Cornerstone was down 0.42 on Friday. The NASDAQ was down 0.40. So this is pretty close, right? And so this is how I'm getting my correlation is I put a lot of my money, 30% of my account. It's my largest holding, Cornerstone. I put my 30% of my money into Cornerstone because it is not only a 4-star fund, but it gives you a 20% dividend, 4-star fund on Morningstar. It gives you the 20% dividend that's higher than most index plays, like an SPYI or QQQI or whatever. But it's also giving you days gains and correlation, just like SPYI would or QQI would, but you're getting a 20% yield with Cornerstone, and you can see how the chart moves upward with the indexes right here. So please don't say that the chart looks bad, if you're using Y charts or something like that. Please, factor in total returns here like Morningstar does. And so I use Cornerstone, and also we get the 20% dividend. In addition, you get the 18.8% gain every month on top of the 20% dividend. So I'm always going to push Cornerstone here at my channel. I don't get compensated from any funds, but this is how I maintain my correlation, okay? When you have all these Yieldmax funds, even a CONY and a MSTY, you have to be careful because they can really take you down in a down market or not participate in an up market necessarily because they're not large parts of the indexes. But I'm going to touch on that in 1 second. The fact that we're going to touch on the indexing component of CONY in 1 second. But Cornerstone, how would you not put more of your money in a fund like this when you get the 20% yield, it's indexed, it's the S&P and NASDAQ, and you get the 19% gains every month on top of it? CLN, let's see what the premiums are here. We're at 19.03. We've seen premiums as high as 30%, 40%, even close to 50% in some years, like in 2021 with Cornerstone. So you're getting that on top of the dividend. And then you get, it's just one more thing about Cornerstone, you get the rights offering opportunity, so you can sell here at these highs and buy in at these lows because we alert you of the RO announcement here on Discord. Okay, so Discord is our chat room. When you buy my e-guides, you get Discord for life. Okay, this is where we alert you of the Cornerstone rights offering announcement. All right, we get the N2 filing here and the rights offering announcement. The N2 precedes the rights offering. And so most closed-end funds like Cornerstone have rights offerings. You can play them, to your advantage. You can really level up your accounts because you sell high, you buy low, you buy, you back up the truck when it's low, and you can really level up each year regardless of what the market's doing. That's why I'm always in Cornerstone. So we're getting those drips, we're getting the dividends, we're getting qualifying income to live free from a 9 to 5. We're getting return of capital, which is tax-free dividends with Cornerstone. I'm anchoring my portfolio into Cornerstone. Cornerstone is my cornerstone, no pun intended, because it gives me the correlation that I need to days gains and days losses, especially when using margin, okay? Just make sure you play Cornerstone properly around the rights offerings and premium thresholds, which we cover in volume 4. All right, so Cornerstone is the first way that I get that correlation. Then we talk about ULTY and YMAX, because ULTY and YMAX are below Cornerstone in my account. Okay, so ULTY and YMAX are some of my largest holdings, but they're below Cornerstone once again. That's because Cornerstone is the most correlated, and it's giving me that dividend. It's setting the dividend for the year. It doesn't cut it during a down year. It keeps it the same, whereas ULTY and YMAX's dividends fluctuate. All right, so to maintain correlation, you need to be indexed into Cornerstone, and then with YMAX and ULTY, they are largely indexed YMAX, but now YMAX is starting to get some questionable holdings. We've been talking about this. We've been pounding the table on the fact that YMAX, it started out with the Mag 7 names, but then it started adding in all these more speculative holdings. So it's a little harder now to get your correlation guaranteed with YMAX, because look at these holdings. You know, you have Exxon, which is, you know, a big part of the indexes, but you have, and Palantir is also in the indexes now. PayPal's in the indexes. You have a lot of these in the indexes, but you have some of them that aren't, you know, like a Maro, okay, like an AIYY, like a HOOY, HOOY. So you have things in here, Carvana, that are not in the indexes. Babo, okay, not in the indexes, Alibaba. So this is harder to correlate with, okay? YMAX, you need correlation because when you're using margin, you especially want correlation. And what I was telling you about my professor, Salim Thani, was, you know, basically, if you're into the Bible, okay, the Bible says live in the now, okay? Don't live in the past, don't live in the future, you know, live in the now, okay? And today is a new day, you know, let the, you know, the old, it says, you know, have the old world, you know, be gone, and the new, you know, the new world is here, okay? Or, you know, you can't put, an old wine into a new wine case, okay? You know, once you live in the now, okay? And my point is saying that is, you forget about the past, you live in the now. God's name is I am, it's in the present, okay? I am. And when you're living in the now and you're correlating now, okay, it doesn't matter what yesterday's losses were, okay? So if you've been investing this whole time the wrong way and you have been just getting losses and gains, and you don't really know what you're doing per se with your overall strategy, you're just kind of winging it, you're living on vendetta trades with old trades, and you're just trying to always, you know, break even or make money on the next trade, that's not the way to live. Okay, 90% of traders lose over time. So I want to get these days gains here, these correlated gains that are massive gains, that I'm not trading, I'm not clicking a mouse, I'm not putting in any effort. Okay, my system is already set. Okay, we talked about that in another video about, you know, tilling the field and having, you know, a system, you know, like a garden, and you have a system here, not just, you know, tilling the garden for, you know, with your foot, as it says, you know, working hard by the sweat of your brow, not doing it that way, doing it more with grace and effortlessness. So we wake up and I get these gains. I don't do anything and I'm correlated. I'm not trading. I'm getting the same gains that a trader would get. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. But I'm not putting in any effort. I'm not risking things. I'm not buying and selling, not taking tax losses, because I'm correlating, okay? I'm correlated with Cornerstone, first of all, and then with YMAX and ULTY. And even though I'm using this margin leverage, it's still indexed leverage. I'm using leverage upon leverage with index names, okay? Cornerstone being one of them. And then, of course, we have the triple C's, okay? I leverage up with the triples, okay? Obviously, we have 100 and 200% gains in our triples. You can see that in my members' videos. Everyone knows that. And we're getting massive outperformance because of our triples, okay? The triple C's, which I talk all about in volume 7, all right? The triple C's are how I get these explosive gains and also minimize my risk in a down market, because, again, what would you rather have? 100,000 in SPY and the market lose 50% and you lose 50,000 in SPY? Or would you rather have 30,000 in UPRO, okay, 33,000, which times 3, that's a triple. Times 3, that's like having 100,000. Well, if the market moves down 50%, even if it moved down, you know, and went to 0, which it never would, you would only lose the 30,000 in UPRO versus the 50,000 in SPY. That's why actually leverage vehicles, if you play them properly, make you more money in an up market and lose you less money in a down market, especially if you manage your position sizes and you hedge with shorts like we talk about in volume 7. All right, so that's how we're getting these gains, okay? We're correlating, okay, without trying. We're getting these daily gains without trying, without having to put, you know, without having to hunt my next meal or try to figure out the next trade, or, you know, living by a vendetta, you know, trading mindset of always trying to, you know, do better than the last trade or something. That's just a terrible way to live. You wake up, it's gut wrenching when you are trying to find the next best trade. You have to put a lot of money behind these things to make money in a trade, and you could lose a lot because you're trading, obviously 90% lose. And so I'm putting a lot of money in things that are indexed and things like Cornerstone that offset the erosion and give you capital gains and compounded gains away from ULTY and YMAX. Then I use the triples on top of that. So that's point number 2. Okay, so those are 2 secrets right there. You stay correlated with Cornerstone, with the triple C's. Okay, then you stay correlated, and we're going to talk next about CONY and MSTY. But then, and YMAX and ULTY are somewhat correlated. But again, we talked about the holdings of YMAX. We talked about some of the holdings in ULTY. They aren't completely correlated for you on a down day. And on an up day, they aren't necessarily correlating for you either. ULTY, you know, down 0.84, and the Dow was even up, okay, 0.08. And that's why we have things like UNH. Okay, UNH was up 13%, which is one of the largest holdings of the Dow. We're diversified into healthcare. All right, we stay completely diversified. Call that another secret to investing with Yieldmax and retiring early, is you don't just have it in ULTY. You spread it around with the other indexes. You have 3 indexes here: the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P, and the small caps, of course, the Russell. And so again, the Dow is up. Go look at what United Healthcare did, you know, on Friday. Okay, it was up huge, and all of my members, you know, we can attest to the fact that, you know, not only was UNH up huge, but our other healthcare holdings were up huge because because of UNH's bounce, okay, and the fact that Warren Buffett and them are taking bigger positions in it. So, okay, correlating with the triple C's, with Cornerstone, and also with selling options. I sell options on the indexes themselves, get more days gains. You see these total gains here, okay? I'm not looking at the total gains or losses, never cared. I only look at the value here on the right-hand side. I sell options, lower my margin by $50,000, for example, with Bitcoin, with BitX. All right, that's, you know, basically the index for Bitcoin. It is an index play. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, one more announcement. I'm raising prices on my e-guys. I just want to let y'all know, raising prices. That price increase will be in effect at the end of the month of August. Okay, just bring that to your attention. All right. So BitX, we sell these puts, lowered our margin by $50,000. We also sell puts on the indexes themselves, like UDOW, like UPRO, as you can see here above. And, you know, we're up 575 in this UPRO lot, but I'm not worried about that. I want the $1,000 roughly, you know, because, you know, the $1,600 price paid, that's what I click my mouse, I sell, and I get $1,600 immediately for selling a put option on UPRO. Okay, so these are the lowest risk way to play the market, selling put options. Okay, that's how Warren Buffett, you know, gets ahead. He sells put options on Coca-Cola. I lower my margin, I lower my risk, I get more days gains performance. You can't see it here in this column because it's the weekend, but normally you see days gains here, and these give me more correlation to the indexes and help me beat the market. All right, so if we're getting these days gains of, you know, you saw 30,000 in that one picture, okay, and the dividends of 800,000 per year. This is how we get the outperformance. We get days gains and dividends thanks to our ability to correlate without trying. I'm not putting it all in MSTY right now. I'm not putting it all in CONY right now or something like that, something ridiculous like that. Although that strategy has been very lucrative for many people. In a down market, that can be crazy, okay? So I'm correlating with the indexes long term, surviving this market long term, staying free long term, surviving even down markets. We outperformed during the recent down market, even with 400,000 of leverage, because we use the triple C's properly, and because we correlate to the indexes, not to MSTY, YMAX, ULTY, CONY, etc., etc. Gosh, my throat. I've gotten a lot better, but still. All right, now, CONY. This is what I want to announce about CONY. Here's a little secret with CONY. Okay, CONY, it's in the S&P now. Okay, Coinbase, it's now in the S&P. I think it went in around May. So we're actually getting more correlation with the indexes now by owning CONY. So CONY, it has 100% maintenance. That's the problem with CONY, okay? If you go to the maintenance of CONY, you'll see that its maintenance requirement is 100%. This is a problem, okay? Even Coin is 100%. All right, once again, this is a problem because when you're trying to live financially free out of your brokerage account, you need to keep all of your available withdrawal preserved, okay, as much of it as you can. And maintenance is the key to doing this. But if you have high maintenance like CONY does, then you suck up all of your equity and you cannot live free out of your account. Even if you're not using margin, you won't be able to withdraw out of your account and pay your bills. I use my E-Trade checking account to do whatever I want, okay? It's just like a regular bank account, and I have a card, an E-Trade card, and I can do whatever I want with this card. I can swipe it and go wherever I want and do whatever I want. It just adds to my margin debt at the end of the week or month or whatever. Gosh. But my dividends just pay that back at the end of the week. So I'm never worried about, charging to my margin. How did Elon Musk buy Twitter? He uses margin in part. So I just keep swiping and buying things, whatever I want, although I don't buy many things. I'm not a material guy. As you know, the Bible is not for that, for a good reason, I think. It makes you broke and it doesn't make you happy. All right, and I found the Bible just by finding money, okay? When you find money and when I got to $1 million, it didn't even change my life. I already thought I was a millionaire when I had $100,000 because the system is what matters, okay? We have $2 million invested. That's what really matters, first of all, right here. But the system of investing is what makes you a millionaire. So if you started here at $10,000 or $100,000 and you let this system be your system to retire on, then you're already a millionaire. Just go ahead and accept that now, okay? And so when I became a millionaire, that didn't really change anything for me because I've been just doing this same thing the whole time, which is correlating with the indexes, having this system of using these dividends and days gains to get me maximum outperformance. All right, and so now we have CONY and YMAX, which are CONY and MSTY, which are now parts of the indexes. You can get more correlation with those, okay? And so that's one of the secrets to getting ahead with your indexed approach is you use coin, okay? You use CONY because it's now in the indexes. It just has the high maintenance. And so if you have this kind of high maintenance, again, you're not able to withdraw out of your account, even if you're not using margin. And that's a problem. You need to, be able to live out of your account, and you need to have this system in place. And again, you're already a millionaire if you just understand that this is the system. You correlate now, and you have your dividends pay off your margin, and it's just a self-sustaining machine. Okay, it is automated out of my account. All my bills are automated out of my account. My margins pay down automatically by my dividends. And then we're also getting these days gains. But again, the secret with CONY, one secret here is that it's in the indexes. So you buy it, you get the correlation. Also, Granite shares have puts in here and they protect your position with a put. Okay, so, they sell put options to get their leverage, okay, on the 2 times long coin ETF, okay? Which is another way to get more performance out of your account, which I'm going to talk about with members this week. But you have the put options, okay? If I'm not mistaken, YieldBoost does this with all of its funds, okay? They use a put option to protect all of them. All right, so double check on that because here we have to look at the prospectus, but I use COI because it's another way to get more exposure to Coinbase. But usually, again, Granite shares will use a put option in there to protect it from the downside. All right, so that's one way you can employ COI. All right, Coinbase, you can get more out of it with CONY and with COI. Obviously, you hedge CONY with fiat as well. Okay, so you hedge CONY with fiat You use COI for a little bit of extra income and protection. And then you have the double leverage version of Coinbase. What is important to note is that you use the double leverage Coinbase to get extra daily gains. And if you go look at a chart of Coinbase, you'll see here that actually Coinbase is at an attractive time. So one more secret to using Coinbase: obviously buy it low, sell it high. We're at 400 now. We're roughly at 300. From 400 to 300. That's a pretty nice pullback. Okay, so you have from 300 to 400, which obviously is, if you just do the math on that, that's a 33% gain. From bottom to top. So you want to buy these, at the opportune times on their charts. But let me just throw in one more secret, if I may, with coin. You see how it's 100% maintenance? Well, ULTY is, look out for this, 50% maintenance. Whereas if you go look at the holdings of ULTY, you'll see that if you just look at, just zoom into these holdings, you'll see that Coinbase is here, okay? It's in the holdings for ULTY, all right? And it also has some other holdings like Galaxy, which I own this in my portfolio as well. So it has other crypto holdings, BMNR, as you can see there. So it's a way to get more Coinbase exposure, more crypto exposure, let's say, while having 50% maintenance, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? 50% maintenance. This means that we're actually able to live freely out of our accounts because we're not sucking up all of our equity. If you need help understanding maintenance, that's in my Volume 3 e-guide. All right, I see your orders here, everyone. I see your emails. I will definitely get back to you as soon as this video is over. Okay. Also, everyone, please check your spam folder. All right, whenever you get an email from me, if you don't get a response, if you think you didn't get a response, just check your spam folder, because for some reason, a lot of my emails go there. All right, so I think I just unloaded like 4 or 5 different secrets on you, but if I could just stress and summarize one thing that I was saying here about Coinbase, it's that it has 100% maintenance, whereas ULTY has 50% maintenance, and it has a lot of crypto names in it. So you're able to get the 80% yield while preserving half of your equity. And this is how you not only withstand margin calls and never come close to a call, but it's how you keep withdrawing out of your account to live financially free from a 9-to-5. Okay, so we talked about all kinds of things: how to get correlation with Cornerstone, how to get correlation with selling options, which, by the way, if you need help selling options, that's in Volume 6. All right, and then you can buy options to hedge your account. See, if we stay indexed and correlated with the indexes, then we can easily buy put options on the indexes to marry our portfolio with puts. We can grab them all, group them all together, marry it to the index, and then have a put on it, okay? And we always buy S&P and QQQ puts. That's in Volume 5 if you need help buying puts. So we buy puts for insurance, and we sell puts like these on the indexes to get more correlation and have positive returns on the indexes, okay? Because when we buy options for insurance, those are generally guaranteed to lose over time because the indexes go up 7 to 10% per year over time. So we just use these options. We buy options for insurance just like you would with a house, and then we sell options to go long, okay? We want to get a sign in these names at the bottom because then we would make even more capital gains going forward, but we never even get a sign because these are so conservative, okay? So I gave you plenty of secrets. The biggest secret of all being correlation and how to do it, okay? And I just told you how to get more index correlation. And on down days, we're also hedged, and I teach you about the hedging with Volume 5, of course. And in Volume 7, the triple C's, it's kind of a summary of all of my guides, and we have our updated learnings in Volume 7 where we talk about how to use our hedges a little bit more to our advantage, okay? Because, now we're implementing 0 DTE hedges in it, which, again, can all be found in Volume 7. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get to my chat. And don't forget, you can hedge winter to MSTY, okay? So MSTY, you hedge MSTY with winter. You hedge CONY with fiat. You buy some COYY. With MSTY, you buy some, MST. In my situation, here's MSTY. You buy some MST ULTY, which is the long of it, okay? You can buy some just MicroStrategy in itself because that has plenty of beta, plenty of growth to just have your capital gains exposure with, okay? So MSTU. You also have other kinds of vehicles like MST that you pair with MSTY to get more days gains ability and dividends on top of that, okay? But always manage your position sizes properly in these various MicroStrategy funds, okay? Watch your position sizes, keep those small as I do in my portfolio. All right, so I've given you tons of secrets, but I just want to summarize and say that, you know, the one thing that you have to pay attention to here is correlation. My professor, when I was talking about being in the now with the Bible, what I mean to say is if you had losses yesterday, you know, just worry about pegging your portfolio to the indexes now, getting your correlation now, and I promise you, you won't be able to outlive that, okay? Once you get the system in place, you won't outlive it. It's just going to go on forever and ever, these dividends and these index returns, because the S&P always goes up over time. If it doesn't, then there's something wrong with the USA. So you just peg your correlation, correlate your portfolio to the indexes, okay? Use YMAX and ULTY to get some of that, but also use Cornerstone, sell options on the indexes, use the triples like we discussed earlier in the video, and you know, to get more CONY and MSTY exposure, perhaps look into having a little bit more in ULTY because it has those, except it has the 50% maintenance. All right, and then we just talked about how to hedge those out as well. Go see the video, go rewind the video if you missed that or you're just not tuning in. Let me get to my chat, everyone. Once again, we're living financially free out of our brokerage accounts using Yieldmax, CONY, ULTY, YMAX, and margin. If you need help doing the same, email me for my e-guides at akintodd48@gmail.com or head to my website, unconventionalwealthideas.com. All right, here are the testimonials. We have too many to even enter in. I just use the comments from my videos, and they're too numerous to even list. So you can check those out here, or just read the comments in my videos for how, you know, just see how well this system works for my members, okay? We have thousands of members who have signed up in our Discord chat, and we have over 2,500 members now. So that's, you know, a testament of, you know, how the community is receiving these strategies, okay? It's not just using Yieldmax and using Cornerstone or using margin. It's using them together, understanding maintenance, understanding equity so that you can live out of your brokerage account. All right, I love you all so much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.